I have been seeing a lot of posts lately on threads and Instagram stories of people who are, I guess, disappointed that they're not getting either selected for tester calls that they're applying for, or they're putting out tester calls and they're not getting many people apply. So that is what we're going to talk about in today's video. My credentials in this area, I have done a lot of pattern tests since I started making especially crochet plushies, and I've also now run a couple of tester calls of my own for patterns that I've released for Patty and Bango's place. So I now have a little bit of experience, well, a lot of experience on one side of this and a little bit of experience as a designer as well. So I thought today I would just take you through a few tips from, I guess, both sides of the pattern testing process. I'm also very sorry, it's extremely windy today, so if you can hear rattling in the background, that's just my windows. So I'm gonna start with being on the tester side of this. So let's run through, I guess, some of my top tips for if you are someone who is applying to be a tester using these like Instagram tester calls especially. So the first thing is you need to have a public account on Instagram, and you probably want it to be like, if not crochet related, at least craft related with crochet items on there that people can see. And the reason for this is obviously, even though people use tester calls, like, yes, to get their pattern tested and make sure it's good to like sell or put out and have people be able to use properly, it is also a marketing tool. That's just the world we live in. So people want to know that the people who are following you, one, have an interest in this pattern, and two, you yourself have experience making crochet plushies or crochet clothing or whatever it is, or even knitting. Let's not be fiber arts exclusive here. So number one tip, have a public account where people can see what you're posting and try and post some craft stuff on there and crochet stuff on there. Leading into the next tip, on your page, have like nice pictures that show samples of your work, or like even if you post a lot of reels and you don't really do photos, that's also fine. Having reels that show your work and also like show your personality a bit can be really positive for people choosing you for testing calls. Again, the reason that you need to have like nice, I say nice photos, just like well lit, clear, where you can actually see the product that you've made, that helps a designer know that your style matches the style of the plushie, and also that you'll be able to give them a photo if they need it to put in the pattern, things like that. It's good to be able to see people's work when you want to choose them to help test your pattern. Number three, and I think this is something that a lot of people do on Instagram, but definitely not everyone, and I personally think that it is a really good way to show that you support designers and like other fiber artists, is to, in your caption of any post where you are posting about something you've made, tag the designer in it, or at least tell people where you got the pattern from. I personally think it's really easy and like a very positive community thing to add that information in your caption as well. And that's a really positive sign for someone looking at your page, choosing you to be a tester, that you support designers and you put their name out there when it doesn't cost you anything to do so. You know what I mean? The next thing is, here's the thing. You're not gonna get every tester call that you apply for, and that is totally fine. Like, there are huge name creators that apply for tester calls and don't get them, and the reason for that is that as a designer, you can't pick every single person who applies to your tester call. A lot of the time, there are tester calls that like go gangbusters and they have so many people applying, and it's really hard to choose people, and like a lot of the time it just kind of comes down to these tips obviously, but also like a little bit of luck. So I think one of the best ways to help give yourself, I guess, a foot up in these tester calls is to actually engage with the designers that you like most outside of their tester calls. If there's like a designer and you really like their patterns, don't just like their posts, like also give them a comment or, you know, respond to their stories and let them know that you're there and you're cheering them on and you like what they're doing. And then when you apply for a testicle later down the track, if you've been supporting them in other ways, they'll recognize your name and it will give you a better chance of getting selected to test for them. A lot of the time a designer wants to know that the people who they're selecting are actually going to finish this pattern test for them and send through feedback and help out. And I think it's easier to believe someone will do that if it's not the first time you've seen their name or you've heard from them, you know what I mean? So give it a go, see if that works. The final, I guess, piece of advice for this little section is that if you've tested before, make a highlight on your page so that it's really easy for a designer who is checking people out to find the pattern tests you've done. I personally just, every time I've like shared a post or photo of a test that I've done, I just also share that to my story and add it to my pattern test highlight. You don't need to do it because it's on your feed anyway, but it just makes life a bit easier. I don't know. If nothing else is working, give it a go, you know? Why not? Those are my little pieces of advice for if you're applying for testicles and not seeing much success. If you have any other tips or anything that I've missed in this little section, please feel free to drop it in a comment and help each other out there as well. But now we are going to move on to designers posting testicles. And if you're not seeing many people apply for your testicles, here are some things that you can do. I think my number one piece of advice in this section is to make it really clear that your post is a testicle. A lot of the time when I see people on Threads or wherever being like, oh, I posted a testicle and like no one's applied for it, I've gone onto their page to have a look and just looking at their grid, like I can't tell which post is the testicle. That's a really easy thing you can fix, right? When someone's scrolling their feed, if they're not reading the captions, they should still be able to tell that your post is a testicle. It should be on the image somewhere or in the reel or something like that, so that when people are scrolling, being lazy, not reading their captions, not being lazy, but you know, that's how people interact with social media. That is the number one piece of advice. Make it super, super obvious it actually is a testicle. The second thing is have all of the information someone might need in your post. So that includes information about how long the test might take, how long they'll have to do it, and like all of that stuff, what they need to do to apply, blah, blah, blah. And a couple of my tips are gonna feed into this. The first one being you need to have a reasonable deadline. You know, if you don't have a deadline from some external force that's happening, like you're going on holiday and you need to get it out or whatever, put a more reasonable deadline than you think. People are busy, people are like volunteering to do this for you. I think like 99.9% of testicles are, you don't get anything in return, and that's not why people do them, but it does mean you need to give them a bit of grace and give them enough time to do it. So trying to make sure there's at least like 1 or 2 weekends in there is great. The other part of this is please don't require people to do like a million things just to apply. Personally, what I find are reasonable requirements, like according to me, and I'm just one person, but I think it's completely fair to ask people to follow you, to like the post, and to comment saying that you want to test. I think like they're the reasonable things to ask people. You're also asking for their time to test your pattern, right? I think on top of that, like tags or sharing to story or things like that, those should all be like optional extras to help support the designer more. You know what I mean? That's typically what I'll do. There's like very minimal things in there. It's like if you want to tag some friends, do, because we all know that tagging friends helps you get reach. We all know that sharing it in the stories like helps you get reach. So I do understand why people do it, but having like a whole load of requirements for someone to do and hoops for them to jump through just to apply for your testicle can be off-putting. Like that's it at the end of the day. That's that tip. Like, I don't know what else to say. And then like, if you are struggling to get reach, like ask your friends to help you. You know what I mean? Like they don't have to test, but if you've got other like crochet or fiber art friends that are active on social media, just send them a message and be like, hey, I have this testicle out and it's not getting many views, do you mind sharing it in your story? Like, I don't expect you to apply or put your time into it, but if you don't mind sharing on your story, that would be really awesome. And I have definitely done that before, and a lot of crochet people are really nice and are like, yeah, of course I can do that because you also support me in other ways. Like, now, do not slide into someone's DMs who you don't know, asking them to share it. I have had someone before who doesn't follow me, who I don't follow, just send their testicle to me, being like, hello, I have a testicle. Would you like to apply? That's not the way. Don't do that, please. I was like, I didn't see it in time, first of all, because it went into my requests, and second of all, I was like, oh, that gives me the ick a little bit. No, thank you. So that is not what I am advising, okay? The tip is go to your crochet friends who you already talk to, who you have a rapport with, and ask them if they wouldn't mind sharing it with zero pressure. With zero pressure. Okay? All right? Are we clear? Great. Okay. That's all that. The last thing I will say on this is just to make sure you're posting about the item in the lead up to posting your testicles. Having that lead up time, even of like a week where you're posting in your stories and you're posting like maybe a reel or maybe a post showing it, people start to get excited and they're like, oh, where's that pattern from? Oh, it's coming soon. I will follow this person so I know when it comes out, or like I'll keep an eye out for the testicle, or even like a little countdown on your stories for when the testicle's coming out. All of those things can help. So talk about it, you know, don't wait until the testicle is out, or don't wait until the pattern is released to talk about it. The last little tiny thing that I want to talk about, again, for people who are putting testicles out there and having their patterns tested, a little bit of like courtesy might be the wrong word, but like, I don't know, let's call it courtesy. A little bit of courtesy during your test can also go a really long way to making sure people want to test for you again. So I think like the number one thing is, if you are putting a testicle out and you have a date that you've got your like, I guess when you're selecting your testers, you need to make sure you have your final draft ready by that point. All right. And I know that the reason you're doing a testicle is that it's not a final thing, and that's fine. But if you have something where like a bunch of parts need to be sewn on, or there's like a strange stitch that you don't see in a lot of things or something like that, you need to have like even an interim video before you have your photos of where they can see that stitch, or like, you know, photos of the pattern so they can see how it should all be assembled. All of that stuff is like non-negotiables for when you first send that pattern draft out. It shouldn't be in a position where if someone asks you a question about it, you can't respond to that question and give them an answer within a few hours of you seeing it, let's say, because we're all in different time zones. Because these people are taking their time out to test for you. They might see a 2-week window and know in that 2-week window they've got 2 days where they can get the pattern test done. So if they don't have the info they need in that 2 days, like, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, but also it's like not very great as a tester either to have that situation happen. So that is my number one piece of advice. My number two piece of advice is do not bother doing a testicle unless you're going to listen to advice. And like, that seems really harsh and also maybe really obvious, but like, you need to be willing to take on feedback. Otherwise, what are you doing the testicle for, you know? And that's not to say that everyone's feedback needs to be taken on, but you should at least be able to respond to be like, oh yeah, I thought of that, but I'm not doing it for X reason, or whatever it is. I think most testers are like open to feedback, but I think if you're not, just don't do the call. Like, if you're gonna put it out how you want to put it out anyway, just release it. Maybe this is like my little sassy area of this video, but I don't think so. I think it's like common courtesy to do these things. And the last thing is, I guess the last two things are not necessarily like you must do them, but I find it when I test a pattern, especially if it's like a paid pattern that's not going to be freely available elsewhere, to actually get a copy of the final pattern that you have helped them like redraft, and you know, you can see your little tester photo in there and stuff like that. I think it's a really nice touch to just get a final copy of the pattern. Like, you've already given your testers the pattern anyway, you may as well give them the final draft of it, and like, they've put potentially hours into helping you test it. So, you know, also a thank you post. I think those personally, I do them like a week later, just as like a little, let the pattern sit and settle in, and then kind of bring it up again and like really focus on the testers. I'll usually do a week later, but I let them know that that's what I'm doing, you know? So thanking the testers, sending the final post, being open for feedback, and actually listening to it, and also having that final draft ready when you're sending it out. Those are my top tips. I hope this was helpful, and if not, don't tell me about it because my ego can't handle it. But also, if you have any other advice for pattern testers, for designers, drop them in the comments below, let each other know, build up this like nice little crafty community that we've got going on. And if you liked this video, give it a like, and if it was useful, maybe subscribe, because I talk about crocheting stuff in my other videos. So thanks for being here. I've been Mel, you've been great. That was so lame, but I kind of like it. Okay, bye! Testicles. Now,